Hi, this is Herb Lear, and this is Thanksgiving for Ending Parkinson's podcast. I will include some clips of people I interviewed this year, and all with family with Parkinson or dementia.
This is Herb Lear, and I'm doing my podcast today from the Lucy Library on the 8th floor at UAMS, and it's again with Dr. Dahl, who is the chair, head of the neurology department. Just think of it as being Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld. Age versus youth.
This podcast, it's kind of a one-on-one with Dr. Dahl, and I appreciate you setting up the time to talk to me today. I was looking through the videos, and I want to kind of start this way because I think it brings the interest in some of the reasons we're doing this. But I saw that when you were, becoming a doctor or deciding to be a doctor, in maybe the 10th grade in high school, that you found that your father had Parkinson's.
My name is Dr. Rohit Dal. I'm one of the neurologists at UAMS. My reason for becoming a doctor and my reason for choosing my specialty both are tied to something that's quite personal to me. My dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease when I was in 10th grade, and so everything from there is moved based on finding new treatments and new cures for what my family has suffered with. I think of clinical care as a combination of managing lifestyle, trying to treat the underlying condition with what tools we have, and also looking at the future and trying to find new tools for treatment of
Today
condition.
is at the Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts. And I have with me Dr. Victoria Ramirez.
That's right.
Hey.
And what better place to work in museums than Washington, D.C.,
Right.
where you have all those museums in such a small geographic area.
Yeah.
And so my very first museum that I worked at was the Smithsonian.
Wow.
And I fell in love with the field from the very beginning. But to give you a little more information about me, I do go back to Cleveland regularly to visit my mother. And my mother has Parkinson's.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting.
She was diagnosed about 10 years ago, and about 4 years ago, we lost my father.
Okay.
So she lives on her own, and I have been watching the progression of PD in her. And we see each other regularly, but I understand completely about having that cognitive awareness, but it could be spatial awareness that is challenging. For my mother, it's speech sometimes.
Right.
For my mother, it's she's lost the ability to use her handwriting like she used to.
Yeah, you see that a lot.
Yeah. But she regularly takes yoga and strength training classes at a place that's designed for people with PD.
Okay.
And it's really taught her how to navigate the world with this disease. And she is a member of the Cleveland Museum of Art.
Okay.
And she goes there regularly with her friends and with me when I'm in town. And it's really a delight to see her socializing and connecting with other people and seeing new things that she encounters when she goes to the museum, because that's what keeps her mind going. And so I say all of that because I'm really delighted to meet you.
Well,
and I'm glad you're here.
I'm delighted to meet you, and that's something that I really wanted to bring out when I do.
But it's worked pretty well up to this point.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'm going to get some of my weight back so I can get around a little better.
Right.
I've been I was driving without any difficulties, but Betty convinced me to stop driving around town. Now she's got Parkinson's, so
Yeah, I knew that. I knew you.
I argued with her about her Parkinson's. She argues with me about my Alzheimer's. And mine is not severe yet, nor is hers.
No.
But it's something we have to be sensitive to any place, but certainly in a city where the traffic is heavier. And that's just the way it is.
So after another location didn't work, we ended up at the Capitol Hotel restaurant for breakfast. Okay, this is their area of seating preference, and this is where we ate breakfast from. All right, I think we're just going to get started. We're just going to freewheel here. So it's Herb Blair and Governor Jim Tucker, and we're doing a podcast from the Capitol Hotel. How are you today, Jim?
Better than I deserve, fortunately.
That's the way we always are. I was amazed when I talked to you yesterday. I don't know. We don't usually have the video on there, but I noticed you were doing a feeding tube. What do you have to do now? I know you have Alzheimer's and you have some other. What are a list of things that you're doing now?
Well, I don't know that it's a big list. All of us take some pills or something, but I take a number of pills. I've had since I was in college and in the Marine Corps, a bunch of intestinal problems and surgery. I had a liver transplant Christmas Day of 1992 from an 18-year-old boy who was killed on Christmas Eve in a snowmobile accident. He had gotten his driver's license the day before and had signed the back.
Primary reason for the camera angle was because of privacy issues. We wanted to avoid other people in
that
the
18-year-old
hotel.
boy signed the back of his license to authorize donation of his organ.
The idea was that I had a lot of people that had gotten the image of Michael J. Fox, and I wanted to make sure that when they saw what I was doing and people I was talking to, that it comes a lot of different ways. You know, one person said that if you know a person with Parkinson's, you know one person with Parkinson's, basically, because I know that in reading your situation, it's the way it was kind of it's somewhat similar to mine. And I think there's one thing that I found, and we'll talk about that a little bit, but one of the people that really determined mine was Dr. Vermonti, and I know you went down and did some tests with him. Yeah, he's good. He's a good, really good, and I had some, I don't know, I had some people look at it that were supposed to know something about it, and they didn't diagnose it 4 years before he did. So I think what you ran into there was some of the same issues. Now, I know you, have you done some things with speech, or how has that worked with you as far as?
My speech is poor, but I've taken the speech lessons, mainly loud.
Yeah.
Loud and proud or something.
Well, I was wondering because that's one of the things I've been trying to emphasize with mine.
I don't believe you.
Run.
What?
Oh, come on, Audrey. I look like hell. I got bags under my eyes. What's that? Well, if you were a man, I would punch you. I'd punch you right in the mouth. That's Bush. Bush League. The Human Torch was denied a bank loan. You hear me? Audrey! Look at me! I'm sorry. All right? I'm sorry. Ho, 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 ho.
All right, we're on. Ready, Phil? We're on in 5, 4.
When the clock struck 6, it meant one thing for Ron Burgundy and his news team. Go time.
I've been doing a little bit of a docu-series, and I said, well, and this is it's taped, and I'll do a little bit of editing, but it'll be a lot just what we say, and do, and that's kind of where we are. But you know, I'm just thrilled to meet you. You know, we've you know, when you see somebody on TV, you kind of think, well, I know that guy, and
Well,
really,
I hope so. That's the way we wanted it to be when we first started out. Roy and Tom and I had a lot of meetings with our general manager before we ever went on the air, and one of the prime requisites was, hey, you guys have got to go through the camera. You got to go through the television receiver at home, and these people have got your viewers have got to feel like they know you, and I think that's what we kind of hung our hat on for.
well, I think
Well, the Ron Burgundy character was short-lived. Dave Woodman's wife had dementia, and I didn't want to disturb her.
let's talk about you know, reading. You're a super reader.
Now you're talking about language.
All right. Now, how did you get to be a super reader?
Well, here's the deal. Been in broadcasting 54 years, and for 31 of those, I would go to schools and tell kids to read. I mean, periodically. It wasn't a mission or anything. It was just when I asked, and I didn't do that much. But every time I'd go, read, because it helps build your imagination. Well, Herb, in 2000, I'd been to Sheridan and done my usual speech. And I'm driving home, I'm feeling good, I made them laugh, blah, 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 blah. But a voice in my head said, you know, you're not reading. You're telling kids to read, but you don't read. And that voice was absolutely correct.
No one better than Craig O'Neill to work on speaking with intent. Also, I found that his father had Parkinson, so that was one of the reasons he was so interested in what I was doing as far as a podcast.
One books.
To the zoo, and I might start with. Sure. I know you're a director, and sometimes you hear the word zookeeper, and I wanted to make sure I understood the difference in what a director does at the zoo and what a zookeeper does, so that I kind of have an understanding of what your function there is. So.
Sure. So the executive director is. I guess what you would say is the head of the zoo. So I manage all the operations for the zoo and lead the function for the organization. We have several different divisions for the zoo. We have a division for facilities and operations, which is in charge of all of the construction and maintenance, janitorial. So I oversee that division. We have a division for the animals, which is the division for animal care and conservation. That's the largest division of the zoo because it wouldn't be a zoo without the animals.
Right.
Right. So we have that division of the zoo. We have another division, which is our guest services division, which is the front line of the zoo, which is the division that takes care of our guests when they come through our front gate. And
one interesting thing was I noticed all the noise over where the gorillas are from the interstate highway, and it's kind of like Bitcoin mining or something. So I thought that was pretty loud. Hopefully I'll do something about that.
For education, our conservation education division is responsible for all of our education outreach, our safari camps, for our on-site programs that we do for education, which is very important for the zoo because we want people to understand.
And as you can tell here, but it's nice to have you here because it's a little easier than trying to do it with Zoom. I know I had some issues. You didn't have issues, but last year was kind of funny. But the idea when I started putting this together is to provide some entertainment, but I also wanted to be informational and motivational. Okay. And we're sitting on some really tough bleachers here, I can tell.
Yeah.
So we want to get off the.
We definitely want to get off the bench here, don't we? Get in the game.
Yeah, and we want to be, and the inspiring content for people that's got anxiety and depression are the big things. Mm-hmm. So when you have anxiety and depression, that's one of the things I worry about. Have you had any conversation with Calipari, or is
Oh,
it
no.
no conversation, or nobody?
No, I wrote them to buy books for the players, but I didn't hear back. But anybody,
Hey,
put them on blast.
we're gonna get him off the bench.
Yeah,
there,
we
maybe.
need to get him off the bench in the game real quick on that one.
Well, what kind of advice would you give him if you ever talked to him? I mean, I
wouldn't give him any advice. No, he's coached long enough. He's a veteran. He knows the advice is get the best players.
Yeah,
these guys are coachable, and hopefully they stay healthy.
Well,
games.
And I know the history when you came over, or stayed in state, and the triplets basically were 3 players in state, and I know the history of the Razorback football, and it's pretty well had to have a core of Arkansas players. I don't see any Arkansas. Herb Blair, as we close out 2024, 2025 is going to be a big year. Okay, we got President Trump coming in, but we also have the national plan to end Parkinson's Act being in, I guess it's been enacted as far as the presidential signature on it, but it's going to come in, and I was wanting to kind of show that there's been kind of more of a sound of silence about that. I don't know whether everybody thinks it's going to end up in research or whatever, but I'm hoping to build interest in my podcast, because I try to do a lot of things that are entertaining to a level, and in my selection of guests, but also educational and motivational. And I try to make that point every time I start a podcast, because I want to reach a lot of people. Some of the people I want to reach, of course, is pretty much a broad base of people who experience, obviously the normal things of depression and anxiety, and somewhat delusional. Occasionally I get on to the political end of it, because there are concerns I have. I have Parkinson's, of course, and some other things that go along with that, or maybe not necessarily with other people, but I do experience some other things, because I do have a pacemaker and AFib, and a lot of issues. I've had spinal cord stimulators, so I've gone down the whole 9 yards of everything that you can try to improve. And one of the things that you'll find real quickly about Parkinson's is that people who sit and don't do anything have a history of going down very fast. I just put the book there in the background, but you could see right off that A Son's Journey talks about his mother having Parkinson's and why she might have gone down faster than others, and his disappointment. But he also talks about being a person that, he's a caregiver, and now he's an advocate. So I think that's a great story that I want to touch on a little bit again. I thought I'd read some from the book I bought, and again, it's Dr. George Ackerman, A Son's Journey, from Parkinson's Disease Caregiver to Advocate, in memory of my mother, Sharon. I'll read over page 10. My father wanted to become a doctor. He could only seek his goals if my mother sacrificed her career and education, and she did. She also sacrificed a lot of others throughout her life. After marriage, she gave up teaching to raise a family, my brother and me. She devoted herself completely to her children, giving me a wonderful, loving, attentive childhood, and always stressing the importance of education. That is probably why I am successful in education now. I have several advanced degrees and teach at the undergraduate, master's, and doctorate level. She was by my side through every graduation. Every day I thought I would not make it through a program, and every one life's journey challenges.
I believe I am the man I am today due to my mother's sacrifices, and I am forever grateful. In addition to being my mother, she was my coach and mentor. My parents were married from 1972 to 1995, 23 years. In 1995, they divorced, a blow to the family. But my mother carried on and devoted herself to her children and later grandchildren. Shortly after the divorce, we moved to Florida to be near her mother and sister. We were happy for many years, but the first troubling signs were in 1999 and progressively became worse. In 2005, when she was in her early 50s, her left arm became rigid. I was very busy with law school, the police academy, my doctoral study, and building my own family, but we spoke every day. And then in 2016, the symptoms became more serious. During everyday activities, for example, eating, she said her left arm hurt, and I noticed she was having trouble cutting her food. She would express frustrations, but none of us were aware that it was Parkinson's disease. So you can see that it went several years before it became noticeable. And again, sometimes if it's diagnosed early, then certain things can be done to maintain or at least avoid the progression that she had, because it came on pretty fast. And I think that's one of the things that he wanted to detail is all the attention in his diary. I think that the book is really good in showing all that information and connecting it with any associated illnesses or dementia. and talks about the 5 stages. And I thought I'd leave that to people who want to buy the book. And again, that's Dr. George Ackerman. And he has a PhD, and he's also an attorney, and he's passed the bar, and he lives in Florida. So he's got a lot of credentials that can show you some of the things that people are faced with. I've also kind of pointed out, as we've kind of gotten into the new, as far as the new year and getting into the new year and the inauguration, and I think you'll be surprised that I show you some text that show how much they appreciate my support as far as the Trump people, I guess. And I don't know where that all came from, but I do have a lot of concern for the people he is selecting for his cabinet. Unfortunately, he has not moved on like a lot of people had hoped, and he has kind of stayed with the idea of retribution and how much he can do to damage and hurt people. That being said, I'm concerned more about the social programs at this stage. As a businessman, I'm sure I'd be more concerned about the other stages of the economics. But what I'm seeing here is that, when you have Elon Musk, which I have a great regard for what he has done, and I've commented about the fact that he could probably save a lot of money on the government program that's trying to get broadband to the rural market. He's been virtually left out at times when states talk about spending billions, and I've always said that would probably be a solution. Now, people get confused at the speed he provides. It's an adequate speed, it's a great speed from the satellite, but it's not anything close to broadband, but it's not necessarily needed in the rural areas. And I've commented that the real driver of the broadband is going to be telemedicine, telehealth in a lot of sense. And I understand that, getting information out to people and being able to react and be measured by some of the things that they're doing. So, Elon Musk has come up with some different plans that are a little different than what most people might think, and they have to be considered. You can't just go out and expect the broadband, whether it's cable or telephone or even
some of the other methods that might be out there in the ISP versions to fulfill that need. So that's the nature of this podcast, is to show that you can save $1 billion, and it's going to be equivalent to $1 billion earned, and I can show you ways that that's happened with people who fail to go to people in broadband who are successful. And I'll take my company as an example. We were able to create a technology company, and we did it for cable TV with software, and we expanded it out to be a national company and then an international company into over 50 countries. And at that time, there was no commercial broadband. So you got to talk to people like myself and others in order to make sure that you don't waste your money again, because there was just a lot of money that's been wasted and it's going to be wasted in the rural broadband project. There will be no need to have that same experience and same waste of money when the national plan to end Parkinson rolls out. And again, that's coming up officially as of January 1, 2025. So I hope you enjoy some of the clips I've
Other than the
put
fact
together.
that when you start looking at Elon Musk, he's pretty much throw the baby out with a bathwater type solution, which means that he's willing to do a lot of artificial intelligence. And again, I'll match my credentials on artificial intelligence and Internet of Things and all the other smart homes, smart vehicles, and smart whatever with anybody out there. I think I've done as much or more, and I think you can find it if you go to my LinkedIn. Just go there and look at my what I've done and what I've been paid to do. So it's not something I've done as a hobby. And the other is, the fact that he and his plans there are going to have to be a lot of things that could be very damaging before they're very helpful if you're trying to, cut money, like he set up to $2 trillion on a budget, and the only place he can cut the budget is probably in the Medicare, Medicaid, and other areas. Again, having a daughter with special needs and a wife with, cancer. I'm not sure, as far as myself, I'm 80-year-old. I think I can handle whatever that's thrown at me. But I think it's really could be a real serious situation. I kind of joke that at this stage, I think it's going to be proven that that Trump and myself are the only sane people, and all the rest of the people have, I guess, what I would consider a version of Parkinson's, where they're delusional because they think that, or they thought that Mexico was going to pay for the wall, and now they think that these tariffs that's going to be out there are going to be something damaging to Mexico and Canada, whereas if we need products, it's going to cost more for the American people.
Christine, good morning. We have tasked you this morning with Schoolhouse Rock. I mean, the real idea of what are tariffs, how will they affect consumers? Because this is something that Trump campaigned on, and he's ready to deliver on that promise.
And this is not a little bill on Capitol Hill. This is an import tax. A tariff is an import tax. So imagine you are lumber, a load of lumber, and you're coming from Canada to the American housing market. As it crosses the border, whoever is buying that lumber in the United States must pay a tariff, according to the president-elect, 25% tariff. So $1 of lumber now costs $1.25.
Costs you more to get something from these other countries.
Who pays that? Donald Trump keeps saying that these countries pay it, that Canada, the government of Canada would pay 25 cents on every dollar for whatever is sent into the United States. That's not how it works. Whoever imports it in the United States pays it, and then they pass it along to consumers. So these tariffs, these import taxes, essentially end up in your grocery bill, in your housing bill. American consumers pay those, or the companies that import them pay them. So look, these are day one executive order, he said he wants to do this. Alarm bells in the capitals last night of our closest friends and allies because they see this as something that could disrupt supply chains. It's something that could lead to counter tariffs and retaliation.
Well, how would that work? Like a retaliatory tariff, how would that work?
So imagine Canada, for example. It has a big auto industry. The cars that are made in Canada, half the companies are American companies, and half of the auto parts started in America, were made in America, shipped to Canada, put in a car, and may end up being shipped back to the United States, right? So it's a very dynamic cross-border situation. So if they're going to be taxed to send something to us, why wouldn't they tax the United States to send the parts in the first place? It sounds complicated, but when you start throwing taxes on top of taxes among your best friends, that disrupts supply chains. It can raise prices. What's interesting here, too, Savannah, I think, is that President Trump has talked about being tariff man before because he wants tariffs to have stuff made in America, saying, if you're going to make it someplace else, I'm going to put a big tax on it. It's because I want it made in America.
So most are familiar with the Trump Bible. That was the God Bless the USA Bible. And you can see that he paid $3 and sold it for $60.
This time is different. He is saying he wants these countries to end illegal immigration and the drug trade. So this is more of a punishment than an incentive for domestic production. It's a different kind of rationale than we've seen before. But again, alarm bells in America's capitals, wondering if this is just the opening salvo of what will be a long negotiation. But if he's saying on day one, you can expect that prices could start rising early next year. And it's interesting. I was covering for you guys the port strike a few months ago. And as I was talking to some of these people who bring things in and out of these ports, they had been saying, we have been stockpiling goods that we import because we expect there will be big, big tariffs and there will be inflation and supply problems in the spring. So industry is preparing for this
It's so
already.
interesting when inflation is what most analysts think is what led to Donald Trump's victory. It was people were sick of paying more prices, as you cover all the time for us.
That's
and
right.
We might be getting high prices again.
If you have 10% tariffs on Chinese goods, which Donald Trump has promised, Goldman Sachs a couple days ago said that would add 1 percentage point to inflation. So instead of 2.5% inflation, you'd have 3% inflation. You put big tariffs on our closest allies, that would be more inflation too.
All right. Christine, thank you very much.
And I think that if you bought into the idea that Mexico is going to build the wall, then you probably are building in, you're thinking that's going to happen. Well, it's not. And, you can believe what you want to on that, but the obvious there. And getting all the I guess, illegal aliens, and I'm not sure what that involves cost-wise. It looks like it could cost a lot of money. It's going to be amazing what that and how that impacts our agricultural business, whether it's Tyson's or whether the people out in California that's out there that's raising a lot of fruits and vegetables and other places, and then also some of that labor that's hired. And just I can see a lot in communities where I don't know whether they're legal, illegal, or not, but there are a lot of those people that are taking the place of people who don't want to do that kind of work. And you can say what you want, but I've seen it on golf courses. I've seen it in yards or putting roofs on buildings, and a lot of others where I would kind of question whether they're legal or illegal. But it'll be amazing what cost will increase there. And then if you get into social programs, you start cutting there. It's great to be against abortion, which I am, but you got to be willing to consider the cost. If you have unwanted kids and they are taken to their adult stage, there's a lot of expense there. And I wanted to make that comment because I'm probably one of the people that can make comment about, I've had a child with disabilities, and I've gone through all the stages of trying to get her to work and her being put on several job opportunities, and she's got to get a job, and they see her credentials. She's gone to a community college and got a lot of great credentials, but once she gets into the workforce, they see her appearance, and they sometimes think, well, it looks like Down syndrome, and they don't really spend the time to understand the difference between orofacial digital and that, and having mild retardation. And so we've gone through that. I mean, I've gone through all the legal aspects of it and tried to get it settled. But, you know, the only thing is that there's a reason to have money involved if you do that. And I tried to stay away from, you know, doing that, although it probably been a better plan. But then she is putting on programs in order to survive and live that she has to use, and I don't know where that's going. You know, it's kind of bad when you're cleared out of the workforce just because people don't like your appearance, and then you're put into this program and you're kind of wondering what's going to happen with the you know, our benefits that are out there, and medical benefits are a big thing. So, you know, what goes on there? But I can go on and on. I'm going to, you know, clip this in with a lot of things that I want to make sure that I have a great understanding of people I've talked to, people who have either parents or family with Parkinson's, and you can see what I'm trying to do with this podcast is to make sure that we can develop, you know, get the subscribers. You know, the only thing you have to do is free, is to subscribe, and that helps me with the demographics to take to advertisers and sponsors. And I hope to get that in place as we go into 2025. I've got a lot of great people I've worked with, a lot of things that are actually free and won't be the cost of the millions and trillions and billions that the government's going to pour into this, and not really get the effects that I can provide through my podcast and through my contacts I've developed.
Unanimously passed the National Plan to End Parkinson's Act, a bill that for the first time marshals agencies across the government to tackle this disease, this awful disease, in a comprehensive way. I thank Senators Murphy and Capito and everyone who championed this bill. Parkinson's is truly a terrible illness. It's taken an awful toll on my own family, my mom's.
Well, it'd be nice to see a little emotion and empathy from the senator there. He just reads and never looks up and never really makes it anything more than clinical.
Once and for all, by promoting better Parkinson's research, encourage more effective treatments and other measures. With this bill, we're taking one step closer to bringing this awful disease to an end, and I thank everyone who made it possible. I also in particular wish to thank Representative Jennifer Wexton of Virginia, who has spent months championing this bill even after being diagnosed with a particularly rare form of Parkinson's. She's an inspiration. While many would have been discouraged or lost hope with a disease like this, she has endured. She has used her struggle to help others, and now the bill goes to the president's desk.
Parkinson's link to gut bacteria suggests unexpected, simple treatment. Health 26, June 2024, by Tessa Kumunduros. Illustration of bacteria on the colon epithelium. Nanoclustering Science Photo Library Getty Images. Researchers have suspected for some time that the link between our gut and brain plays a role in the development of Parkinson's disease. A new study just identified gut microbes likely to be involved and linked them with decreased riboflavin, vitamin B2, and biotin, vitamin B7, pointing the way to an unexpectedly simple treatment that may help. B vitamins.
Well, one thing I've done is I've looked at about any and all situations to evaluate possible things to treat my Parkinson's, and one was a gut analysis, but that might fit in with the RFK Jr.'s style, or maybe some of the others that's coming in to health. But I've been there, done that, because I've always tried to be progressive in things that I did. I'm going to skip some of this because it's just same old, but I did want to indicate that I have looked at a bunch of different things.
Underwhelming national attention to the National Plan to End Parkinson's Act. I wonder why it was treated in such a clinical way, and why people are talking about how they're going to do it with less, I guess, emotion and less compassion for ending Parkinson's. I think there should be much more excitement, much more interest in starting and providing solutions to the plan.
Today, we're found our happy place, and we're at the Van Buren County Library in Clinton, Arkansas. Dr. Lyda Kreiner. But the idea here is a follow-up to one we had previously, and the reason for the follow-up this soon is of course, the national plan, and that's to more or less for Parkinson.
All right, more than 10 million people in the world are living with Parkinson's disease. Here in the U.S., nearly 90,000 people are diagnosed every year, which is why a new bill President Biden just signed into law is so important. Fox 13's Shira Masuzawa breaks it down.
For me, this bill is about hope.
Hope. A 4-letter word that carries a lot of weight. And for Northwest Parkinson's Foundation's Executive Director Virgil Sweeney, President Biden signing the national plan to end Parkinson's Act into law gives a newfound hope to the nearly 1 million people in the U.S. living with Parkinson's right now.
Parkinson's disease is the fastest growing neurological disorder in the world right now.
Earlier this week, the president signed that act, making it the first ever federal legislation dedicated to ending Parkinson's disease. The legislation will increase federal research funding, develop more effective pathways for treatments and cures, and improve early diagnosis. It will also put together a task force to help people with Parkinson's, but also the caregivers and families.
Sometimes those are the people that get forgotten, and they bear a lot of the burden.
Sweeney says this takes effect next year, but it's already a huge step forward because this means resources will come sooner, and hopefully a difference will be made in the near future, not the distant future.
A lot of people with Parkinson's live in their own world, and we want to let them know it's okay to have Parkinson's, and there's a whole community available to them to help them through their journey.
The key word there is putting together a task force, which we're interested in being part of that facilitation. Okay, the national attention given is very underwhelming, and the people who talk about it is very clinical. So how could it ever succeed?
There are people with Parkinson's, and that's been, voted on, accepted by Congress, but also signed by President Biden. And so that act has been activated, but it's also there are plans in the future to bring it to the public in various ways. Now, the reason it's kind of motivated me for this podcast today was I was listening to a Q&A, and it involved Leslie A. Chambers, President and CEO of American Parkinson.
Federal legislation dedicated to the prevention and cure of Parkinson's disease. Ted Thompson is the Senior Vice President of Public Policy at the Michael J. Fox Foundation, who led the advocacy team that was instrumental in getting this bill passed. Ted has more than 30 years of experience in public policy and government affairs, serving in several nonprofit leadership positions, and as well as serving on the staff for 2 members of Congress. Ted also helped create the Unified Parkinson's Advocacy Council, or UPAC, of which APDA is a member. So let's bring Ted to the screen to share the latest updates on the status of this new law and explain why it's so important. Welcome, Ted.
Thanks, Leslie. Great to be here, and I appreciate the partnership with APDA through the years. You've been an important partner in advocating around public policy issues, and you mentioned UPAC. That's a broad-based effort to draw in as many Parkinson's and Parkinsonisms organizations as possible, so that on policy issues we're speaking with one voice. And a prime example of what that will get us is the National Plan to End Parkinson's Act.
Can you please give us a brief overview of the National Plan to End PD and the significance of it for our community?
Absolutely. And I will state at the outset that this was not my original idea. I saw what was working really well for the Alzheimer's community and thought, you know what, we're the second fastest growing neurodegenerative disease in the world, and we need a national plan to address Parkinson's, both research, care, diagnostics, the whole 9 yards. So what the national plan does is it establishes an advisory council of federal and non-federal members. That on the non-federal, they're all going to be people, experts in Parkinson's, including Parkinson's patients, caregivers, providers, researchers, and at the federal appointees will all have some role to play in the Parkinson's paradigm. So the advisory council will be established, will require the Secretary of Health and Human Services to submit a report to Congress, also identifying level of research funding that needs to happen. And just, to put it in perspective, with Alzheimer's, their research funding went from roughly $450 million a year to the most recent fiscal year, $3.8 billion. They've had a massive increase. And in the Parkinson's space, the federal government spends about 100 times more money caring for people with Parkinson's than they do researching the underlying disease. And we think that's got to be changed, significantly changed.
So, how much more clinical can you get as far as having these people talk about ending Parkinson's or any kind of a plan? I'm sure that it just gets everybody excited. No?
Disease Association, and she brought in Ted Thompson, who's a senior vice president of public policy of the Michael J. Fox Foundation, and they talked in terms of having a national advisory council of federal and non-federal members for the research, care, and caregivers. So we feel like we have put together a coalition of people, and we're working on other people, but ourselves. I've been doing a podcast, and also to educate, and as I've mentioned in the past, that many people have issues with anxiety and depression, and we've talked about some of that, but that's one of the big things that's not only with Parkinson's, but people that's been found to commit suicide, and also other people that are involved with disabilities or even no disabilities. They have those issues. But I've been trying to do this podcast so it can be visual on YouTube, and you can find that under my channel. That's Herb Lair under YouTube, and the name of it is Finding Your Happy Place. But recently, and that's why we're getting a bigger distribution and people that are listening, is from our Apple podcast, and you'll find that that's primarily audio, but it reaches a lot broader group of people, and they can listen to it when they're traveling, and so it's very good for mobility. But we understand that in order to get this idea that we're presenting in front of people, that we're going to have to work with a lot of politicians and even businesses. The idea is that a big company, even like Walmart or some of the other large companies that's in Arkansas, such as Tyson's or even Missouri Bass Pro, or it's going to be a good program and content for their employees in order to take care of their health care. And then also they may see fit to have something like this available to their customers. So we're going to get into that a little more in detail, but I wanted to talk a little bit about what I saw in the Q&A as far as the act, and they said this could be a Trojan horse, and we have to be careful in what we think about and recommend, and that's why we wanted to present what we bring to the table, but also that we have some skills that have been proven, and we know some people and things that can help in not only prevention but better care for people. So I want that to be part of our discussion today, and I think the point that Ted Thompson made was, he said, to make sure government does what it's told to do by Congress.
Government. One point that I want to make, though, is we need to make sure that the government does what it's been told to do. Sometimes things like this pass, everybody does their victory lap and says how great we are because we did this bill, and then they move on to something else. That's a recipe for failure. And so we are going to be keeping an eye on this, watching this, working with you and others to make sure that the federal government does what it's been told to do by Congress.
Right. The whole race isn't finished until we get to the end, and that's the point of advocacy, that we will be staying on top of that, and all the groups combined from.
I've seen that in a lot of cases where it comes a boondoggle pretty fast if they don't. And so we're hoping that people with skills, and we're going to talk about what we think is necessary in our coalition. So I wanted to start with that background, and then start with Lida talking about some of the things that she's been involved with, and some things, material. I know she's writing some articles now, and so you want to just give me some thoughts and ideas of what you see that needs to be done to improve, particularly the care and health care.
Well, that's a very broad topic, Herb. I'm wanting to hone in specifically on the lost and forgotten people who are struggling, very sad and unhappy and depressed in nursing homes, other facilities, or even at home with a caregiver. And also look at the caregivers and their problems, their issues, and their needs. So it's specific and not as broad as it seems that this Parkinson's Act is. But this would be a very important component of not leaving these people behind, these persons, these individuals who are not getting the services that they need, particularly caregiving, which CNAs and people on duty with a big heavy schedule really just go in and leave the food, and they say, "How are you?" And some of the people are too depressed to even respond. And so I think there's a place where someone like I am and others could fit in that middle place where the persons, the individuals don't want to live and they don't want to die. And so that middle place that I mentioned would be the happy place where we could go in and look at their levels of what I call dose, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins, and get those hormones or whatever activated so the people would even want to eat their meal or do their therapy or live. So that's kind of simplistic in a way.
So Dr. Craner's observations were exactly what we see in the book as far as the frustrations of finding caregivers that actually do more than just check boxes.
He had with finding people to aid or help with his mother, because he had a lot of things going, kids, and he had a lot of things as far as career. The difficulty of finding good aid companies or individual aid to help care for mom led me to make a list of errors, troubling behavior, and cautions to keep in mind when interviewing the companies and aids. Prior to finding the final excellent aids from Reliance, I still cannot believe that in my 4 years of searching and incessant interviewing, I had to remind the so-called professionals or some of these areas, we do not want mom to remain only in her bedroom permanently. So daytime aids, take her outside to the patio, help her walk, help her do things that she no longer can do herself. Never leave mom alone. She fell once when she was left alone. Please remember to follow the medicine pill box instructions strictly, and if anything runs out, notify me or the nurse immediately. Some did not follow the correct medicines, doses, or schedules, all of which are life-threatening. It said, please be pleasant and supportive. Don't wear perfume. Keep areas clean. Don't yell at mom. She has Parkinson's and dementia and may need extra care. Be able to understand Parkinson's disease, understand dementia, understand fibromyalgia,
understand the possible hallucinations and delusions that come with PD, communicate with mom and me. Communication is critical. Never say hospice. That word tremendously depressed and upsets my mother.
So when you ask me what I've been doing, I've been researching articles and journals, looking into the Michael J. Fox Foundation, and there's a lady, I think her last name is Peace, P-E-A-S-E. She has a website that has so many different approaches and ways to help people. But really, when this act or this movement or congressional bill signed to end Parkinson's, I'm looking at the big foundations, which already said they would do that 20 years ago, and we're still, in the same place. For instance, what's his name? James Parkinson, discovered or was named in 1871. I don't know. Maybe it was 1817. I'm not sure. Well, anyway, it's more than 200 years later, and he would have been turning over in his grave because nobody followed up with what he wanted to do. I mean, he said, I'm baffled. I don't know the cause. I want my colleagues, my science people, to follow up and find the cure. Well, here it is more than 200 years later, and here we are sitting in the Van Buren County Library looking at these problems. So, biting off more than I can chew, but at least I have to try to jump in there and at least go and see the people that are hurting and suffering, that are underrepresented, don't have insurance to cover the things that they need, that are so highly advertised that will help. So that's where I am. I don't know that I would fit in anywhere in this.
Well, I think the case is that we're kind of, a lot of times we're in a position where we fend for ourselves. And I'm speaking from personal example. I was kind of diagnosed 12 years ago, but I kind of muddled around. I did a lot of things and went on as normal as you can be.
Did you feel like you were normal?
Well, I did some things that were like I had done before, but we were going through a phase, even in the commercial aspect of it, where 9/11 had impacted some of the things I had done in the past as far as international travel. And so I started working with companies in the U.S. and did a limited amount of travel, but I was having some difficulties with my walk, and actually 8 years ago I'd had major surgery and had with a titanium rod put in, and I found out after that I had a dropped foot, and I actually was not a whole lot better. And Dr. Tuan Vermani at UMS looked at it a little closer, and he determined that it was Parkinson, which I had taken the test, a full day test in 2012, that they had failed to, determine that, which that was their charge, was to find out that. So
Intent to do what?
Intent to speak clearer, sharper, and yeah, it's we do that. There's a class on that, and then we later on have workshops, and so it's something that's ongoing. But I wanted to say that because about 4 years ago I got into rock steady boxing, and again, these are ideas that are out there, and they're very nominal as far as cost. They're not anything excessive, and sometimes they're not very much cost at all. But in the rock steady boxing, you had a chance to meet a lot of people that were having late stage Parkinson. I mean, later life Parkinson, where it was a little bit different. You had a lot of people that had a lot of resources as far as what they had done in life, and a lot of stories to tell. But when I did that, I got to talking to people, and it really kind of, the camaraderie was as big a plus as maybe some of the physical exercise. And I don't want to sell that short.
Excuse me, was that covered by insurance?
It was really just a nominal charge, about $45 a month, and it wasn't, that part wasn't covered, but a lot of things were, as far as using the gym facilities and other things there. So
$45 a month.
I investigated Little Rock. It's a little bit more, but still, it's a good program, and I've been in a new facilities or new home that I live in, I have access to a swimming pool that's a real good therapy pool in the sense it's 50 yards away. I can go down and use that, and plan to be back into Rock Steady Boxing here in Little Rock in the fall when the weather kind of changes and I can't use the outdoor pool as much. So I'm still doing a lot of therapy and working on a lot of things. So, but to get that point across is that if I was sitting there as an individual, and I've seen that in some cases where people isolate themselves and they just get further and further away from people,
right,
and they start losing their voice, and a lot of issues come about.
And physical strength.
Yeah, the thing about seeing a Parkinson doctor, and I'm saying one that takes care of you and looks at the test, and you get tests every quarter, and then maybe a major test every 6 months, but you know exactly where you are and where your level is, and that's the thing you have to do when you look at a person with Parkinson's, whether it's the president speaking, is not what he's doing today, it's what he did yesterday, 6 months ago, or a year, and see where he's going to be in the next 6 months or a year. Yeah. I'm not saying it as a political statement, but anybody like myself, and that's one of the benefits of doing a podcast, is people can see where I am and what kind of things I'm doing and how it's, how effective it is. So that's one of the things I want to measure. I've got some videos from a year ago, and I've been doing quite a few more since I moved to Little Rock, and it's part of it is sort of self-serving, but it's also an opportunity for other people to tell their story. So it's kind of a long answer, but that's kind of my story as to how I got to where I am and what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and we can talk a little more in detail, but I think what you bring to the table in the sense of your ideas is that it's much like when I was watching the Q&A, I was pretty caught up by Ted Thompson's talking about the fact that when they came up with this act, it wasn't so much new ideas, but it was based on the fact that they had seen something similar with Alzheimer's. And I think what you bring to the table is you have a lot of ideas that are a lot broader than Parkinson. So I wanted for you to get into some of the things that you found and give the differences of somebody just as a babysitter, but somebody that does take a lot more interest in the care, and whatever you want to call that service is something you're kind of working on, and articles you're writing to technology or to medical journals that you want to kind of talk about this. So what are you seeing? Maybe from the past, you might give an example of something you saw that somebody had been kind of written off, but you were able to give some special care to. I think those kind of stories are the things that are very important. Is a personal story that brings the point out. So.
Okay, Herb, but I want to go back to the boxing and the swimming. I want to call attention to the nice tan you have, and you said that you've been out swimming, and so that's really a good thing for people to do that can do it, and it's just something that maybe some people haven't thought about. And also that boxing, I wonder if that's the kind of boxing that psychologists recommend for people, some of their clients, to go in there and box out their frustrations and angers. But this is different. This is just...
Yeah, it is a program, and it is designed for people with Parkinson. And all the classes I've been in have had Parkinson's. But the swimming, I was out in Phoenix last when it was really hot, 110 degrees for about all the time I was out there. And we had some fun with going out there, but I wanted to do some things with my daughter at that time. I won't get off on a tangent right now, but one of the things I noticed, I could go out real early in the pool and walk around, and boy, just feel pretty normal.
Up to your armpits? Or
yeah, just pretty much where I could walk. I didn't want to get to a point where I couldn't walk.
Not swimming necessarily.
Yeah, no, it's more walking, because you swing your arms, and actually it helps your arms.
It's more difficult to walk in water.
Yeah, and it really, it's helped my arms and it's helped my legs, and and just to help my mental attitude of saying, wow, that's nice to be able to walk again. But then I came back and I had a physical therapist that, yeah, we got to.
Okay, I'm here at Henry and we're doing physical therapy, and all I wanted to do is kind of get Henry to tell me a little bit about what he thinks the swimming therapy does to people with Parkinson's. So Henry, give me a little thoughts on what you think it does to people with Parkinson's.
Well, we see a lot of people here that's doing water therapy or aquatic therapy for different conditions, and one of them is people with Parkinson's. So Parkinson's usually people with Parkinson's, they usually move slow and they have some balance issues and weakness. So one of the ways or means to improve the balance, especially in their endurance, is through the pool therapy or aquatic therapy. So we kind of make them move a little bit faster when they're in the pool, and the water is going to act like a big support for them, or a big walker for them, where they will be feeling safe when they move and exercise. And at the same time, what we notice with people doing the water therapy, they don't feel tired, unlike when they do the land-based therapies. So we kind of make them do a little bit of stretches, a little bit of walking, and then we kind of include a little bit of fast movements and combinations of upper extremities and lower extremities movements. And we want them to do that as much as they can.
Thing we can do, and we did that. So I went through that, and now I've got the training there, and so now that I've got a pool that's let's say 50 yards from my home here in Little Rock, I just go up there and spend an hour or so daily, and you talked about the tan, it's going to get better, and hopefully I won't get blistered, but
Hope not.
But the boxing is we have a person that, or any class that has rock steady boxing is trained to deal with people with Parkinson's, and so you have a combination of people on different levels, so you're expected to do as much as you can, and you're able to be challenged by other people, but you know where your limits are, so it's not like you're not fighting another person, but you're hitting a bag or.
Well, they might be fighting another person. What is it like real boxing where
you put the gloves on and
they just really hit that whatever it is.
Yeah, and the picture I've got now on my podcast on Apple is actually the gloves I wear when I do that, and I did
they look killer. I wouldn't want to be.
I don't. We don't hit each other, and
good.
And so, the longer you can have your speech and communicate and have a community of people that you can associate with, the better off you're going to be. Now, I kind of joke about the fact that being more of a computer nerd or being somebody in technology, that most of the time I was kind of more in a private mode and more of an introvert.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unusual a lot of times to be more of an extrovert as your Parkinson develops. And my doctor said, well, the majority of people do become introverts and I said, well, that's why I try to do things like my podcast, is to kind of be out there and so people understand that there is a purpose, and I'm not trying to, be something that talks about things I do, but actually talk a lot about what people are doing and how it's helping them to be active. So that's why you'll see just regular people to people who are radio, they're on the radio or on, I have an anchor person who was on the local Channel 4 in Little Rock, or, a Hall of Famer like Sidney Moncrief. Everybody knows from his days at Arkansas, his Arkansas Razorbacks, and his days at in a NBA level with the Milwaukee Bucks. So they're all kind of people that have their own stories, and they connect in a lot of ways. Now, one person is kind of interesting, and he was an anchor man local, but his wife has dementia, and she was there and watched us as we had our podcast, and I was kind of careful, and I will probably re-air or really record that over on Apple, because I did make some changes in the presentation I was doing just because I didn't want to get her offended, but I wanted to have, an interesting podcast. So you'll see some things that's on the fly that's a challenge to me, and having people on there that maybe I haven't even talked to and asking questions and talking. So you could get an idea what level I am in carrying on a conversation or doing what we're doing here is to kind of keep things in a subject area, but also keep it challenging and interesting. And of course, that's part of what I'm doing as more of the moderator, but as part of the people like yourself, is to talk about things that might be an interest to the general public as to what your skills are, but what you've seen that works or maybe doesn't work. And you talked a little bit about people just going in and checking a box of doing something for people, whereas when you have an emotional interest, or at least a passionate interest, I don't say you have to be emotional all the time, but a passion for that care, then you're looking for a lot more than just going in and saying, well, that looks okay, I'm going to check the box. You look at that person and you say, that's a soul, and I want to help that person. And so I want to kind of
deeper level, yes.
Yeah, delve into that with you. I know you've done that, and I alluded to that a little bit because my brother had a stroke, and you went in and helped him, and I didn't know what to do, but you knew what to do. So
I had him laughing and smiling about school and other things, wanted to know who he was and what his dreams were, and he was able to tell me, and he smiled a lot.
Really? Yeah.
And I don't know, it might have made his days better.
Well, I think that's the kind of thing that you would pick up on, and maybe I didn't, because I was looking for the person he was. He's 4 years older than me, but he was such that we had a different relationship. And when I go in here and he has a stroke and he's not communicating much, I'm not comfortable, and I don't know what to do, and I don't spend the time to find out what to do. And that's where a lot of people are.
You may not have the time. That's the main thing, right?
Yeah,
Well,
you don't make the time. Let's put it that.
Okay, well,
I want to be
being pretty honest here.
Well, you have to be honest in those situations. As you see it all the time, where people, when they first get into that situation, they might have a little traffic, and later on they have less traffic, and they may not have any traffic, and they're out there by themselves, and it gets to be pretty lonely. I mean, whatever you are, when you're there by yourself, like you said, that's where we have to think about this with people with Parkinson's, and it's an issue that once you get to that trend and you're kind of going down that level, suicide is an option. I mean, it's unfortunate. I tried to do some study on that because there are people that have it all, like the golfer that was 30-year-old. I wanted to go in and dig into that because it had a depression and it had anxiety. They did add alcohol, but still, the two things there, what we're seeing with Parkinson's, it's what we're seeing with anybody. So that's why when we got together and we started talking on this, I said, well, there's a skill there that I've seen that you have, and I think when you contacted me about seeing me, you saw that that's something I better be careful with, and better try to be careful in what I do to progress. So I wanted to get to that level of going back and discussing those things and what you've seen, and maybe get some ideas flowing out there, because that's where we are. I mean, that's obviously where they are with this new act, is they're wanting new ideas, and it doesn't have to be things that people tried in the past that didn't work. We want to see what you saw and what you did, and what levels of success you've had, and what you're trying to do now. Because when we talked about collaborating and doing something, it's still a relationship we can develop like this, and we can develop with even Rocksteady Boxing, or even people with speaking, or just other programs that we know have really been highly successful, that we think ought to be really brought to the table, so that this act is like you said, we want the the government do what the politicians have been asked to do, and they have to know that they have people that they can count on to make it happen, and have really made those sacrifices at their own time and expense. And that's where I'm going with this is I want you to kind of talk about some of the things you've seen, what you've done, and I don't want to, I want that to be your words and not my words. So,
well, my experience with technology is that you do have to have people that are creative and they have new ideas, and they're not willing or not accepting things that's been done in the past. Unfortunately, when I saw the video, and I understand the politics of getting something passed, but at this point, there has to be a step there to look for people with passion and include them in, obviously, the task force. And that's where I'm getting to it as far as this podcast. I think people who have saw the presentations, saw that they were pretty much online or accepting their ideas and moving forward with those ideas. And they, whatever reason, they seem to be lacking in passion. I mean, I didn't get that passion from any of the presentations that I saw earlier, but I do see that when I see Dr. Kreiner or Lyda Kreiner, and she has a real passion, and I think that's what you're going to see. And I think the mistake is going to be, and that's where I've talked about my experience and what went wrong with trying to get broadband to the rural communities, and I've written quite a bit on that because I started a technology company in the Ozarks and I took it global, and I did it before there was an internet. So you can overcome a lot of challenges if you're creative and if you look for new ideas. But if you want to use the same idea and keep repeating that, Einstein has a word for that people that keep trying the same thing and expect different results are essentially crazy. So, but they spend a lot of money, other people's money, trying to convince people that they have the best idea. So I want to make sure that, the direction I'm going here is to get this information out to some sponsors that are concerned about their taxes and concerned about how this plan is going to be enacted, and if it's going to be another boondoggle or if it's going to be a success. And hopefully we can be involved in some of this task force and have our input. And I don't want to be, I don't want it to go through a whole bunch of filters and not have any say. I just soon be doing it alone and be with a group that doesn't want to look at some of the ideas, particularly when you see people here that have tried things that are very cost effective, but they also have passion in what they're doing. Well, one other point, and it's pretty obvious that when we do a podcast, it's unrehearsed, and but Lyda showed her skills by starting to ask me questions to clarify what I had been doing, and so I brought in the fact that I'd been doing the swimming or walking in a pool and other things like the rock steady boxing and then speaking with intent. And so I was able to clarify, and she persisted in staying with those points, which is what she's just good at and why she is important to this project, because she has those skills. Now, I could have been talking with someone else and we would just moved on, but she was real insistent in that, and I kept trying to get her back to talking about herself. But I think that's important that happened, and that didn't happen as a rehearsed event, you can tell.
As far as Parkinson awareness, you see the tulip, but you also see the PD that's down there below.